Well, welcome to the Great Old Ones channel. Here I talk about role-playing games, one of the things that I love the most, as well as I suppose we could include virtual tabletop role-playing games as well as tabletop role-playing games in this. I'll be talking about a little bit more of that sooner or later. But tonight we're going to continue our discussion on First Edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons character creation, where we left off last week, hanging a little bit with our character creation. We went long, talking a lot about the aspects of First Edition Dungeons and Dragons. And again, joining me this week again will be Doom Swords. Him and I are going to go back into his character creation. So, if he's all set and ready to go, without further ado, we will go ahead and bring him on. Are you all set there, Doom Swords?
Hey, how's it going?
It is going. How well are you doing?
Pretty well, thank you. You?
Awesome. I'm going to put my readers back on so I can see what we're doing here. Getting a little old. All right, we got a couple of people hopping on. It's excellent.
I resemble that remark.
Yeah. Whoops.
How you guys doing?
There we go. I think everybody should be doing okay today. We had kind of left off a little bit here. Let's see. Add to stage. Oh, I got to remove that one. Add that one. There we go. We kind of left off in a little bit of a discussion at the midpoint of your document there, right around multi-class. But since this isn't a multi-class character, we kind of skipped ahead a little bit. Thank you again for finding a better version,
Right.
creating a better version of that sheet. It was beginning to get rather annoying. All the plus signs and everything everywhere.
Yeah.
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 Right. So everybody following along.
Yeah, this looks much better.
Yeah, it looks a whole lot better. Everybody following along. We'd on go through saving throws and all that kind of stuff. We kind of left it there. And I've already included them on here, but the next step after that, step 15 in your document, is determine unarmed combat base scores, such you can for static values. Unarmed combat in first edition Dungeons and Dragons was a source of, I don't know, I mean, you can't use the word contention, but it was heavily modified, heavily debated, left out for a lot of games. I think mostly because a lot of people thought it was fairly complex, and there's math involved. You can't be asking people to do math while they're playing a game. That's absolutely ridiculous, right? So went ahead and included the determined unarmed combat base scores.
Right.
Already put them in your sheet if you notice. Let me see. I can zoom in on that page a little bit, I believe. Yeah. Scroll down a little bit. Right underneath broadsword, which is a nice big letters on there now instead of all spread out a little bit. You have our pummeling, grappling, and overbearing.
Right.
We'll do a stream strictly on unarmed combat because there's a lot to it. And we should probably talk a lot about how it's really done in first edition. And then we could even cover how it was modified and changed in Unearthed Arcana because of probably the sheer number of complaints that the game authors got about how it just wasn't as easy as it could have been. But again, these were guys that were used to on the fly, right off the top of their head, doing math right there at the table during battles.
Yeah.
Because they were doing tabletop miniatures, and that's how all that stuff worked out for them. Base score to hit for pummeling is opponent armor class value times 10 to arrive at the percentage chance to hit. So that's not your base. Your base is your dexterity per point and your strength per point over 15. Right. So I know your dexterity is 14. You've got no points over 15. So your base attack for pummeling is 14. And that's factored against the opponent's armor. For grappling, the base score to grapple is your armor class multiplied by 10. So in your case, pummeling was your armor class is 7, so that's 70. But adding +1 for each +1 of magic armor, right? We don't have any magic armor. Right? Attacker's dexterity per point is added to that, so it brings you up to a total of 84. Right? And that would be modified by the defender's modifications. And then overbearing, which I think
Right, and that's about as that's about as far as you can go
yeah, for
on
your
things that
base
are
adjustments. But if you
static.
have those numbers already ready, it's less work at the table. Yeah. Yeah, I
It
think
is.
overbearing here is highly underutilized. It is a fantastic tactic in battle to just plow through your enemies, knock them aside, knock them down, and things like this. Um, it's an excellent way of controlling the battlefield if you're the larger attacker. It's the same. Your base score hits the same as your
Yeah.
grappling attack, so we've already got that down basically all together. But it's modified by attacker's strength, and you don't have any strength to add it other than your 14 strength, which would bring it to 84. Um, 10% over 18 adds +2. So the bigger and stronger you are, you can overbear. Um, and but it helps a lot. Knocking your opponents away or out of the way or things like this reduces their ability to hit you. It's a good tactic to use. I think it's underutilized. Newer game systems and stuff do include that
I
kind of
agree.
stuff in it. Number 16 is if playing a cleric. Well, you're not playing a cleric, we don't have to worry about it. But eventually, being druidic in nature, you may want to consider a deity at least to have worship. Um, and although we're not talking about clerics right now, I might argue with you a little bit about your statement of your cleric's alignment must match that of his or her deity. Um, I would think it doesn't have to exactly match, but it should be fairly close. Um, Depending on the type of deity and stuff that you're worshiping. Remember, I like to look at it this way: that clerics are part of an organization. An organization has, um, depending on the organization, would have ranks, um, discipline, things like this, as far as the organization goes. So you should, at the very least, be neutral, if not necessarily lawful, to follow along with the tenets of it. But that also depends on your god. Um, Not that it matters here with a ranger. Starting spells. We don't need to worry about starting spells.
Right.
Um,
No.
yeah, and that probably should be something we would go into to come up with a magic user character and discuss how starting spells and stuff were acquired, because that's an interesting part of beginning the game with the magical spells as a magic user. We can include that as another part of another live stream sometime. Oh, well, we got one here. We
Yeah,
used it.
and I
They
agree.
make reference to unarmed combat. Yeah, it's there. It just requires a little bit of math, and no kid likes to be forced to use math, I guess, at the table. Here's your math homework. Go play
Well,
Dungeons and
and one of the
Dragons.
things that
Yeah.
yeah, one of the things I liked about it is, back at that time, I was big into professional wrestling and whatnot, and who wasn't? So
Oh, yeah.
anything that involved sort of a synergy and a cross reference between any sort of game and professional wrestling, I was all about it. I was an NWA guy, by the way, and never WWF.
Oh, I was WWF. I remember WrestleMania, not the two or nothing.
I did
WrestleMania.
watch the WrestleManias.
Yeah.
Yeah,
As
yeah.
a kid, that was kind of fun. And no way, shape, or form would I have ever been able to compete, even against maybe some of the midget wrestling. I was not a big kid at all.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Skinny little blonde headed kid. Yeah. The wind knocked me over. So, for the most part, looking at your sheet, you were fairly complete with it, other than choose a name, background, appearance, personality, will and testament, all that. What we didn't cover was height and weight. And there are actual tables. We mentioned it last week, but we didn't actually cover anything as far as height and weight goes. And all we did buy you was weapons and armor. We didn't actually go into adventuring gear, and we can probably talk about that a little bit. What popular adventuring gear was at the time? Oh, let's see. Where's the height weight table?
Right.
Height weight determination. You put that down. Dungeon Master's Guide, page 102. By the looks of it, is what you said. Let's see. I believe, yeah, that's what your note in here says. So we can pull up that page, but we've got it all written down here. So as a half elf, your average height is 66 inches, which is 5'6", plus or minus 1 to 6. All right.
Yes.
And then your average weight is 130 plus or minus 1 to 20 in pounds. Right. Height weight determination. There's a table to rule. So why don't we go ahead and toss some percentile? We will see if you are over or under height. Because this is actually the last of the actual rolling for things that are on there. Now, a lot of dungeon masters let you just go ahead and choose. But I like the random factors in here to be assigned something random, because part of the game is role playing. Right? This may not be the exact role you wanted to play, but play the role you're given and play it to the best of your ability.
Yeah, indeed. Let me just I need to add window capture. Make sure I'm not capturing the wrong window here.
Aha. You could have just threw a number out there. Nobody out there in the audience would have known.
No, they wouldn't. I expected they might have liked the it might have liked the little overlay there.
Watch the dice roll on the screen.
But I don't want to. Yeah, who doesn't like to see the dice roll? However, I can just go ahead and throw dice. I don't want to delay anything here. So, and I will roll it through the same interface there. Yeah. So what are we looking at here, sir?
Yep.
Height and weight, percentile dice. That'd be the ones, correct?
Yep. Percentile dice. Yes.
All right. We have a 93.
Now you are over height. So your over height is by 1 to 6 inches. And let me find that on that page where we height and weight. Where did that go? Trying to remember where that was.
Number 6 on the thing.
Right. No, but the description on your page where you're at here.
Oh, right.
I'm going to assume you can role play whatever you want, but I'm going to assume for now Rothgar is male.
Most certainly, and that's not to say that I have a problem with anybody playing female characters, but for me personally, I'm more comfortable role playing what I actually am, right? Yeah, just as I'm more comfortable being what I actually am.
Oh, sure, but I'm fairly certain you'd have a difficult time pulling off the falsetto. So,
way back in the day, just a short little anecdotal story. Way back in the day, I had a friend, God rest his soul, because he passed 15 years ago or something. He had these characters from his prior campaigns and stuff, and he would recycle them in my game. And he was a big guy. And he would play he would play a female cleric named Alina, and he would play a halfling, and he had a paladin named Colleen. Now the paladin and the halfling were both males. Alina, of course, was a female cleric, and I used to get a real kick out of making him do the voice because because he'd sit at the table with all of us. You know, we were all teenagers. You know, mid 20s, early 30s, and stuff, and to hear him do the
Sure.
falsetto and stuff was a hilarious exercise. we
I would have
we got a
known. The
big
real
kick out of that.
question is, would I have cared? No, who cares? Yeah. What's the difference? Role play whatever you're comfortable role playing. I've had male players role play female characters, and I've had female players role play male characters. It is what it is. It's a game. Play what you like, right?
Right, right.
All right. So, what was your die six for modifier for
I agree
your?
completely.
Yeah, that was your. So you are over height. So
Well,
it's
I'm gonna
one d
try to
six
fix this a little bit here.
inches plus.
All right, I'll go ahead and roll that. That would be a 4. Let me move this over
All
here.
righty. So 70 inches. All right. Your weight is again. That's the same thing. That is a percentile roll.
All right. Let me just reorganize in the little windows here.
Now we will put a caveat on this.
All right, that'd be a
Overweight
47.
47 is average weight. Overweight on this chart isn't like obesity overweight. This is over the average weight. All right. So an average weight for
Right.
your half elf is 130 pounds. And for average, adjust by 1 to 8 instead of 1 to 20, just to give you the range in the average. So you're 130, you could go plus or minus a D8.
All right. Let's go
So
ahead and roll
for
that
average,
D8.
well, we'll do percentile first. Average is modified. 1 to
Oh,
30 is
okay.
shorter, 71 to 100 is taller for height, and weight is the same, just modifying it. So percentile first, and then we will modify it by a smaller number.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I see it there. 48.
48 is taller
Yeah,
by
which
one,
is
so weight is above, but you are heavier by 1 to 8 pounds. So 130
all right.
plus a D8.
6.
136. 5'10", 136. Well, that's close. When I went to boot camp, I was 6 foot,
Yeah.
160. And a half elf, a little
I
bit
haven't
taller, a
been
little bit tall for a half elf. There we go.
6 foot and 160 since I was like 15.
This was me in boot camp at 20. Yeah. So for the most part, we rounded everything out except for adventuring equipment, and that's always been an interesting discussion. Let's talk about that, um, because some of the cliches as far as
Yeah.
adventuring equipment and stuff goes was the way certain people played. Let's find that prices table. Everybody, for the most part, that I can recall, always went out and bought a 10-foot pole for their basic adventuring equipment.
It's absolutely critical. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's critical in old school gaming. You'll find a lot of cases nowadays, and I don't want to soapbox this or anything like that, uh, but a lot of times nowadays, that sort of concept of adventuring and the slow movement and everything that's included in old school gaming and dungeon exploration, cave exploration, and stuff, a lot of that stuff gets glossed over. and I miss it. So I prefer the games that use those types of concepts. And if I'm when I'm involved with a group that uh, uses 10-foot poles and buys the various equipment, the
Mhm.
hammers, the spikes, the
I,
10-foot
I
poles,
give them opportunities to use it. Yeah.
the flasks of oil. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
exactly. Back in
sounding the floors
these
with your
days,
10-foot pole,
it was
right?
assumed.
You
Yeah,
take a lot of that away, a lot of that fun that we had. The exploration part of it is taken away with just make a die roll. Okay, there's the secret door. Make a
yeah,
die
it
roll.
really is.
Whereas describe to me what are you doing to make sure that those monsters don't come through the door after you while you're trying to recover a little bit. Okay, we nail it shut with spikes. Okay, great, fantastic. They're thinking, they're describing their activities, and imaginations are going. Um, how are you disabling that trap? Like, what is your
Right.
character doing to disable? Not just roll the die. Tell me what it is that you want to do to disable that trap. Tell me what it is that you're doing to discover how that secret door that you found works. What are you looking for? What are you doing? Are you testing bricks, see if there's a hidden button or a switch or something? There's where a lot of these items and stuff that are listed come in handy. Um, the 10-foot pole. The matter of fact, why don't I do this? I will remove that and I will add in. I'll stop the screen. I will add in that page. So we can even take a look at those things as we're talking about them. There we go. Bam. Herbs. They don't give you a whole lot of herbs there. I wish they'd given you a lot more. Um, because one of my favorite parts of this
Yeah,
game
yeah,
is resource management and your material components. Probably don't need, if you're dungeoneering,
yeah,
you probably don't need to buy bat guano, but you can probably find it. But other items. Um, it's not listed for sale because for druids, they don't buy their mistletoe. They have to go harvest it themselves. So
exactly.
more material components in this list would have been a better thing to have. Backpack. Everybody had to have their backpack.
Agreed.
Caltrops. That I don't recall those actually being in the first edition book. Was it added in
Uh,
Unearthed Arcana?
Yeah, yeah, it was Unearthed Arcana. And
Okay.
to take a step back real quick on the herbs, because I don't want to miss that point. There are a number of medicinal herbs in the DMG.
Oh yes.
A lot of this stuff wasn't player facing. So that's sort of where we don't get consolidated views of this stuff. So these herbs really are kind of a starting point. And if the DM has sort of an herbalist, the alchemical society within his campaign world, he has a lot of information to draw on. And I'd recommend that he build out the herbs table or find one of the supplements that did so. There were a few of them out there because the game has a really long history. And there are a number
Mhm.
of them you can find on Dragon's Foot and that kind of stuff, including optional things that to sort of codify what was said in the DMG. So I think that's something that somebody could build out and have it be real useful for their campaign. And
Mhm.
spell components that fall into resource management, like you said, and resource management to me is one of the key pillars of AD&D in particular. I mean, that's why all that stuff is there. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Well, we got somebody that hasn't participated before that I recall. And I wish I could type. Um, had they included that herbs reported properties, medicinal properties of herbs and stuff in the player's handbook instead of waiting to publish it in the Dungeon Master's Guide, you would have probably seen players push for it more because it would have been there for them to read and look and be
Yeah.
curious and stuff about, as opposed to being in the Dungeon Master's Guide and you weren't supposed to be reading the Dungeon Master's Guide as a player, right? Well, welcome to Dr.
Yeah,
John
and there was
Smith
a lot of that going
9.
on. And
Yeah.
howdy, sir. There was a
Yeah.
lot of that kind of stuff going on. And later editions really missed, and I don't want to beat on them too much because I played them. But later editions sort of missed on that and
Um,
instead made it to where buying potions and buying magic items and that kind of thing sort of took the place of that, because a proper herbalist building on the information in the DMG, assigning prices to these and assigning actual codified curative properties of the various herbs would have made a huge difference and sort of eliminated the necessity, as they felt it in later editions, to include magic item shops and stuff. It's just part of the character that gets lost over time, and that's why we do these videos, right?
right, like we mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, all boiled down to a die roll or something now, as opposed to using your imagination and describing and stuff like this. Buying potions as opposed to going out and finding the herbs in the woods. That's what your ranger does. That's what the ranger did in Lord of the Rings, didn't he? Went out and found the king's foil and stuff. And
Yeah, exactly.
you could base sessions around finding a particular rare item that the magic user needed to cast this particular spell.
Even something like Conan the Destroyer, Zula. I considered that more of a ranger character than a thief character, and it makes a salve for Conan after he's been wounded and he's all drunk in the woods at their little campsite where they're taking their rest, and
Yeah,
that's kind of what it's all about, and that's fascinating stuff to me.
absolutely, and it adds to the game. Yeah, one
Yeah,
of the mine. Just the resource management, I think, is really important to me as far as the stuff as the game goes. And unlimited resources and always having something at the hand kind of takes away from the game. Um, I
it
know
certainly does. I agree.
not 100% sure why they included things like chickens and pigeons as far as our livestock and stuff go. But, yeah, a songbird. Okay, well, I can see the songbird because we're going caving, so we might want to bring the canary with us. If the canary dies, oops,
Indeed.
we're going to the wrong place. But then again, you're trying to sneak through the dungeon. You got the songbird twirling away. There's your sneak roll just went out the window. Oh, let's see. Belt pouches and stuff are insanely useful carrying items and stuff, keeping them ready at hand and stuff. Everybody was saying, well, I pull out my potion of giant strength and chug it while I'm waiting to fight. Well, where did you have it? The dungeon master needs to make some determinations about how long it took you to get it out. Oh, it's in my pack. Well, you're going to be taking your pack off and digging through that for the next 30, 40 seconds. So you're done for the entire round. Oh, it was in my pouch. Okay, you can whip
Exactly.
it out in a couple of segments and chug it. And yeah,
Yeah,
tracks
yeah.
were
Well,
always
and that's
useful.
basically how you can look at it. The ye old tourist fanny pack, right? They can unzip that thing and grab a camera out in no time. But if it's a backpack that they're slugging that's strapped on, it's a
Right.
totally different story.
Um, let's see. Mirrors were always in somebody's. Even why did the first level character need a mirror? He was never. The chances of him being deep enough in the dungeon to come across Medusa was pretty slim. But they also had other uses
Yeah,
too as well. Um, Looking around corners and stuff. I've had adventuring parties, and that's what they use the mirrors for. They would come up to a corner and they would lay down on the ground and use the mirror to peek around the corner real quick and see what was around before they decided to come running around, especially if they heard noises.
Uh,
Creative players will take some of these items and make good use of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a side note on mirrors, it's important to remember that mirrors only work, as we know from real life, right? Mirrors only actually have an effect in the presence of physical light.
Right. Okay, so you hold up the mirror and you're using infrared. Well, you're not going to see the heat patterns down the
Right.
hole because that's not reflected in the mirror, right? Um, you can't use anything into complete darkness, just the way the eyes actually work. And we did mention that a little bit earlier as far as hearing goes. The keen-eared individuals, you make that die roll the first time you listen for noise. If you're not a thief, on the hearing table that's in the Dungeon Master's Guide, but I don't recall anything in there about a keen vision. Um, uh, First Dungeon Master that I ever ran with, and you've talked with him before, Greg, included a vision table that you could roll on to determine what type of vision you had. Were you nearsighted, farsighted? Did you have good vision, poor vision, that kind of stuff? And he included that kind of table with his game to add that little extra dimension.
Yeah, it was a smart idea.
Mm-hmm. All righty, we already sucked in digging the back and forth conversion. I think maybe he meant conversation, but um, already sucked in. Well,
You just drove him away.
yeah, I guess so. Well, first edition Dungeons and Dragons is like crack. Once you take your first hit, you can't get enough.
That's a fairly good point. I'm not that I'm speaking from experience, of course.
I don't have any idea what crack does. I'm just saying. Yeah, I've heard. There you go. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Make reference to it. Yeah. Um, and I was going to mention something really flint and tinder torches, so that you can light your way. But everybody always, as soon as possible, tried to buy things like lanterns. Right, lanterns were very, very useful. The hooded lantern or the bullseye lantern to light your way and stuff. The bullseye was more expensive, but it was easier to work with because it was um, similar to a modern day flashlight where it was directional.
Yeah,
Always
which
wanted to
was
light the way.
yeah, a really cool concept. And I like the hooded lanterns as well. And that's something that I think that's worth mentioning. I don't suppose that I need to philosophically tell people why this type of stuff is important. They're either going to like it or they're not. But there's a certain imaginative exercise that I really enjoy, and the verisimilitude and immersion of properly outfitting your character. And as a DM, I'll force that on people, even if they don't like it, because again, like you said, at its heart, or at least one portion of its heart, one chamber of its heart, is directly related to resource management. If you're going to be tracking arrows, you're going to be tracking gold, silver, platinum, jewels, gems, any of that. You should most certainly be tracking your equipment.
Yeah. And okay, so you're using a lantern. Well, you got to carry oil. And a flask of oil,
Right.
what kind of flask was it? Was it a ceramic flask that might break if you fell down a 10-foot pit in the dungeon? Or was it flexible enough that if you landed on it, it might burst open and now your backpack is all soaked in oil and oops, the magic user just threw a fireball a little too close. Now your backpack is on fire. Some good imaginative role
And
play elements
that's where
come out of
the
some of these things.
yeah,
What
that's
else?
where the inventive and intelligent player spares no expense finding a way to purchase metal flasks, steel flasks. You don't want
Right.
iron, that's gonna that has the potential, or lead or anything like that that has the potential to poison you, but steel flasks.
Well, this is medieval. They didn't understand that lead poisoned you. So yeah. Um, the other thing to mention about light,
Right.
a good creative dungeon master is going to use light or lack thereof to make things a little bit interesting. Um, I have put colors, tiles, paint, or things like this in various parts, traps, and that kind of stuff um, in my dungeons where if you were relying on infravision to move around through the halls, um, you wouldn't notice the colors. Same thing with the modern semi equivalent of dark vision, or somehow or another you manage to get ultravision or something like that. You, the colors are going to be important. So I would kind of force the players into somebody at the very least having a light source going so they could distinguish colors. And light sources are visible from a
Yeah.
long way off, a lot further than you can see. So, um, do the risks outweigh the benefits, kind of thing? It makes it a little more fun of a game for them to deal with those challenges that way.
It certainly does, and I think that's led into why things such as Shadow Dark and games like that have become more popular, because the focus has been put on light sources and keeping track of them, and resource management in general. But that
Mm-hmm.
stuff was here since the beginning. It's just something that's unfortunately been
It
ignored
was
in a lot of cases.
inconvenient. It went away, and then newer gamers now are realizing, hey, that was an important part of the game.
Yeah, yeah, it's a wonderful part of the game.
Yeah. Let's see, what do we got here? Did you include psionics in this? I don't
I
remember.
did not include psionics in
Okay,
this.
I'd read it and I didn't see it. And that's the missing piece of our discussion would be psionics. Let's see if I can't pull that up. That was in because that's other than buying equipment. That's the only thing we. Oops, it would help if I could spell.
Right. So you're going to look in the appendix of the player's handbook
Yeah,
where
appendix.
where
Player's
the bard
handbook.
is. That's where we have psionics, and then the
Right.
actual effects of psionics, of course, are detailed in the DMG
Let's see if I can
right
share.
before the saving throw matrix.
See if I can add that in here. Add slides and PDFs. My computer. Gaming. Oh, books. D&D. And I will have to spin through this pretty. Oh, it's probably too big. Might need to just take a snapshot of that page.
Yeah, it's pretty big. There's a lot of stuff going on there.
Matter of fact, what I will do then is just to share my screen. I got the page open. Share screen again. Window, bingo, share. Bam. Psionics. Wasn't something that was, whoops, used very heavily. Just because of the amount of difficulty and stuff that was involved with it. Um, Added some extra to it as just things to know. What I am using isn't Dundermoose's 20 flipping steps to rolling up a character. I'm using Doom Swords 18 flipping steps of rolling up a player character, just not include science. I probably because it just wasn't widely used, but that was a part of first edition Dungeons and Dragons, um, rolling up a character. So let's go ahead and look at it too.
Yeah, and
Characters.
that document that we're working off of, there was just too much. I wanted to actually paste in the rules from the various places so we wouldn't have to flip back and forth. And there's just too. The psionics would have taken up 5 pages out of a document that's only 14 or so to
Right, that would
begin
be a
with,
big
because
chunk of
it's
it.
so complex and spread out.
And the fact that it wasn't all that widely used, would be, and it was in the appendices, which were options, right?
Yeah, and another
Uh,
thing is that the chance of having it is very, very slim.
Actually, the most useful goof
I've looked
trackers I've
at
ever
it.
owned. Sure.
Yeah, I've looked at it and I like it. Um, I think it's humorous. Everybody should check that out. You can find it on DTRPG. Probably if you searched under, you're just you'll find that.
Alrighty. We have a visit to our stream here from the master. Not
How you
the
doing?
Doctor Who master, but, or probably a close equivalent, I would think. Now, as far as psionics go, psionics are various powers derived from the brain. Well, it excludes most player characters, so we seem to adventure in a brainless fashion. And they enable characters endowed to perform in ways which resemble magical abilities, right? So it's another way of having magic adjacent type abilities other than magic users or clerics, right? If your DM opts to include
Right.
the psionic abilities in your campaign, again, this is an option, right? They will be determined for humans and possibly dwarves and halflings. Interesting. Humans, possibly dwarves and halflings. No elves. As follows, right? Characters with one or more unmodified intelligence, wisdom, or charisma ability scores of 16 or higher might have psionic ability. Well, that rules out Rothgar right away because your highest is a 14. And they're all.
So there you go.
So okay, discussion. We're done. No more talk about psionic. Because Rothgar can't have it.
Right.
But as it was part of it, we'll go ahead and mention and talk about it a little bit. Let's see. Whether or not this ability is possessed is then determined by dice roll using percentile dice. Any score of 00, 100%, indicates the ability exists. For each point of intelligence above 16, add 2.5 to the dice roll. Ooh, interesting. So how can I get a half dice roll? Never mind. Each 1 point of wisdom above 16, add 1.5 to the dice roll, and for each 1 point of charisma above 16, add a half to the dice roll. Drop all fractions. So, at the very least, with the minimum ability necessary, it was rare, exceedingly rare, 1 in 100 chance of actually having it. That ability that was modified by levels of your intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. So, magic users would be a little more likely to have it. Clerics might have been a little more likely to have it. Anybody that was charisma based, paladin possibly being charisma based, could possibly have had
Right.
it.
Yeah, and the half the fractions to the rolls. Yeah, I guess you kind of have to look at those as the possible eventuality, which is why they've been included. Since you're dropping the half off if it's not stacked with something else.
Yeah.
But the half is useful there if a bunch of the conditions are met.
Yeah. And well, since DLSD 25 here noted this, let's go ahead and help plug the Dungeon Delvers software that he developed, Crom. It is the definitive, as far as I can find, way of electronically rolling up first edition player characters. Goes by the book stuff. It's excellent, works great, and he's put a lot of work, time, and effort into it. Well worth whatever he charges for it, which I think is too cheap. Excellent, excellent, excellent program. And like he says, the user's manual, that's the player's handbook. Yeah. Make things a little bit easier to roll up player characters than sitting there for 2 hours of watching us discuss it. Yeah.
Right.
All right. Psionically endowed character rolls percentile dice, adding 1 point to the total of each unmodified point of intelligence, wisdom, and charisma score above 12. In addition, if two of these scores above 16, the number of points is doubled, and all three scores above 16, the number of points is quadrupled. Base score is 1 to 100, plus bonuses 1 to 72, if any, are added together. This is the total psionic strength of the individual. It is a strength for attack and for defense. Psionic ability is double psionic strength, i.e., 10 to 344. One half of psionic ability is attack strength, one half is defense strength. Right. So rather than casting spells or things of this nature, you have level of your ability that helps you determine what you can do. Let's see, your attack modes, roll percentile dice, and consult the following table. So even though you may have a superior level of ability, you may end up with only one attack mode that you can do because it's another random table roll. Psionic Blast,
Right.
Mind Thrust, Eagle Whip, Insinuation, and Psychic Crush. It is worth noting that one of the funnest monsters that you can run as a game master, or one of the scariest monsters you can run into as a player character, would be Mind Flayers. And they were designed with psionics in mind that I can recall. All any documentation stuff that I've read about it, that's what they had in mind. And if you were going to use them and you didn't use psionics in your campaign, you just had to modify the abilities they used and treat them more like spells.
Yeah, yeah, and I think there's a specific spot in the DMG, as a matter of fact, that it details psionic ability use on non-psionic characters, and that can be useful. A lot of people did, just sort of take the thing and treat it as a spell. Obviously, the stuff that happens in the separated initiative round for psionics to take place isn't going to happen because there's not another psionic combatant, but it would mean that the mind flayers, mind blast, or whatever would go first. And then of course we had intellect devourers. Didn't I think black puddings had psionic capabilities, and then all the demons and devils were chock full of that stuff.
Right. All that stuff was listed and stuff out for them. Right. So they were monsters that had psionic ability, but the frightening aspect of the mind flay, they didn't really have much else they could do other than their psionic ability. A
Yeah,
demon
yeah.
combatant,
The mind
he's
flayer is
gonna-
certainly, yeah.
yeah. Black pudding, I don't recall that either. I'd have to look at that again. It wasn't that long ago that I had one in the game, but then again, we weren't using psionics, although I should. I haven't ruled out psionics as not being played in the game, just nobody's asked about it. So I'll throw a psionic monster at him.
And yeah, and nobody might have it. Now, of course, depending on the ability score roll method, there's a better chance than in some cases.
Right. Again, method 3, like we discussed during the first one, gives you the best chance at high average scores. Whereas method 1 gives you the best chance at
Right.
having a high ability. Here's a good question. Has either of you actually rolled up a psionic character naturally and played it in game? No. I have had player
Yeah,
characters
I've
with
not
high
either.
enough abilities, but never tried to roll for it. Most of the game masters I played with never really used it, so never really had a chance. That might be fun to actually play with a game master that would allow psionics. I think I might pull that on my Monday night guys. They're going to love me for it.
Actually, it's the I stand corrected. It's the gray ooze. I knew it
The
was one of
grave.
those, but I think I got them
Ah,
mixed up because the gray ooze in the Trampier art looks like black pudding. But
okay.
yeah, the gray ooze has psionic ability of 21 to 121, and his attack mode is E. Um, he doesn't have any defensive
Psychic
modes,
crush.
but yeah. But I
But
mean,
it's a
imagine the
short range
horror
ability.
of that
Yeah.
particular monster, right? Yeah,
Sure.
it's like the type of creature you might find on the dock in whatever one of the creep shows or or whatever it is, but it also has the ability to affect your mind.
I'd have to keep that in mind the next time
Yeah,
because I definitely use them. I like to use those types of monsters in the game because you're underground. There's weird
right,
things underground and stuff. And why not weird monsters? And most of the time, they're a little more than annoyance than a trap or something like that would be. But to have one that can actually really do some damage to you would be interesting. Um, Psychic Crush is a
right,
massive assault upon all neurons in the brain. Gray ooze is considerable gray matter, I guess, right? Attempting to destroy all
right,
by a massive overload of signals. This mode of attack affects but one defender. If it is used, the user may defend with only mode G, Thought Shield, or have no defense at all. Alrighty. We can go over the defense mode. You roll percentile again and figure out how many defense modes you have. At the very least, you have an opportunity to have two defense modes where you may only have one attack mode. So if you have psionic ability, being able to defend yourself is probably fairly important too. What did it
right. Because if
mentioned
you
in
have it, you're going to have
there?
defensive points, right?
Yes. Thought shield cloaks the mind so as to hide first one part, then another. This defense can be kept up at all times, unlike the others. Well, thought shield would be useful for defense against scrying devices and stuff like that as well.
Right. It's nice too that you can keep it up at all times.
Sure. Cost point per usage, 2. As far as that goes, it's fairly cheap.
Right.
Mind blank attempts to hide the mind from an attack, making its parts unidentifiable. Right? Interesting. Tower of Iron Will relies only upon the superego to build an unassailable haven for the brain. What does that remind me of? That reminds me of a movie. Oh, which one was it? One of those goofy horror films with these large worm maggot looking things that were invading the house. And the one guy evaded um, their psychic threat against him by bringing himself to this. He had the character develop this talent for withdrawing into a particular shell because of PTSD or something like that. It was an interesting story. So he was able to
Yeah, it
avoid their
sounds
attacks by
vaguely
doing that.
familiar.
Um,
Yeah, I can't place it though.
Carnivore, but that's not the exact thing. It's something like. But anyway, Richard Witters told an interesting story about being created so Gary could summon a demon when his players tried to
Yeah.
who around demons' names. Funny if true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I've read that as well.
Oh. Those are the same guys that rules lawyer your wishes. Yes. All right. All right. Psionic disciplines. A psionically endowed character determines how many disciplines he or she is able to exercise by use of the following table. Roll of percentile dice. Right. Minor and major disciplines. Now, these other disciplines, other than attacks and defenses, these are things that you can do. And you might recognize some of these things for like the abilities that monks can do or spells that characters can have, like a body equilibrium. There you go for monk, right? Detection of good or evil. There's a spell, right? Detection of magic. There's a spell, but these are spell like empathy or ESP. Invisibility, levitation, right? Um, these are non-spell like ability, non-spells that have spell like abilities. Interesting
Right.
extra stuff that player characters can do outside of magic, right? So being a magic user, okay, as a first level, you only get your one spell, but maybe you had psionics and you've got some psionic disciplines and stuff that you can exercise as well, making you a little bit more useful. Minor devotions and then major sciences. Telekinesis, that'd be highly useful. Ooh, I really don't feel like climbing down into that pit over there with those poison spikes to retrieve that obviously magical sword. Let me float it out of there. Yeah. Etherealness. Turn yourself into a phase spider of sorts, right?
Right.
Body weaponry. Interesting little thingy, a little table there that caught my eye. Body weaponry discipline allows the
Yeah, I
possessor to use
always
his
like that
body as
one.
both a weapon and armor by altering the molecules of the body as needed. I mean, looking at this stuff, man, this would be awesome for your kung fu movie kind of monk character to have.
Yeah. Yeah, that's immediately what I thought. I mean, obviously the monk sort of has that kind of capability anyway,
Sure.
but not not longsword plus
Not like
four
this. We can
capability,
add
you
to
know.
it. Yeah. And then as far
Right.
as your minor devotions and major sciences, they're just like they do with the spells. There's all the list of them. Uh, and they did a little better on this. All right, ASP. This discipline allows the user to tune in to the unshielded thoughts and minds of any creatures within range when his power is employed. In most respects, it is identical to the magic user spell ESP. Thoughts received in non-understood languages will be meaningless. The way they did spells, though, is they would say C, magic user spell ESP, and you'd have to go flipping back to the book to find it. At
Yeah.
least it looks like they spelled them out over here instead of letting you go hunt to go
Right.
find them. So there you go. There was the last aspect of um, rolling up a character that wasn't actually included in your document that would be considered for player character generation. We didn't actually go into detail and actually spend your money on equipment and stuff, but we did have a good discussion of them. So here we are, hitting up on an
Yeah, right.
hour just
Right.
us talking about nonsense about character creation. Another hour has flown by. This is awesome. Anything else you would like to bring up and discuss about character creation? Let me just, you're the other half of this discussion. Let me drive the whole thing.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think we've covered most of that. You know, and really for the most part I've interjected where I felt like there might be a value add or whatever. The fact is that even though characters uh, typically speaking specifically at earlier levels have uh, limited longevity, character creation is really the core of the game from a player's perspective, and I
Sure.
derive great joy, you know, from doing it. in detail, and I always have. If you have nothing to do on a rainy day, at least when I was a kid, when I might have nothing to do on a rainy day, if I wasn't outside anyway, doing whatever I would do, I'd just sit and make up characters. And I think a lot of people still do that. I don't really do it as much anymore, being much more busy than I used to be. But even if you don't play the game, creating these characters is is an intelligent, sort of imaginative exercise
Yeah,
that a lot of joy and fun can be derived from. And
absolutely.
everything that's in here, I don't think that anything in the character generation, specifically in AD&D, is missing, and I don't think anything has been extraneously added to where it overcomplicates the process or anything like that. Even something like psionics, which we talked about, yeah, there's a whole other series of steps to go through to determine that, but the chance is so infinitesimally small that
Right.
that it makes it really special if you do get to that point.
It is going to be exceedingly
And I'll
rare.
also say that, yeah, I'll also say that those goldenrod character sheets were really special in the way that they gave you the opportunity to fill out pretty much anything that you could conceive of for your character, in addition to the things that description section at the bottom. It includes things like a will and testament, because through emergent play, what ended up happening, I suppose, is that,
Character would die.
hey,
Yeah.
yeah, well, yeah, here's Eric's cousin, and he's got all Eric's stuff. Yeah,
Uh,
well, yeah, you better have that
no.
listed in the will and testament next time you create a character. you know, um,
Yeah,
and
all your stuff
it's
is going
just
back to your
it's
family.
really
You know.
fun to look back on that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think all of these things are really just part of the character of the game, and I think the goldenrod sheet that we've gone through exposes it better than anything else does, outside of the rules themselves. I will say that, as we've seen, the rules are scattered everywhere, and there's plenty
Yeah.
more in the DMG. We've tried to include most of it in this document, but a bunch of this psionic stuff is detailed in the DMG and not facing the players. But I think that's less of a feature with some of this stuff than it is a
Mhm.
bug. It's just because Player's Handbook came out first, and then
Well,
relative to the
yeah.
Dungeon Master's Guide,
Right.
and Dungeon Master's Guide came along, and it just it was just an explosive period of creativity for Gygax and others, and
Sure.
and things were built on, and then it doesn't really make much sense, if you're a company like that, to go back and say, okay, well, hey, check it out, the second printing of the Player's Handbook is completely and totally different
No,
than
you
than
don't
what
want to
was
do.
contained
Well,
in the first
yeah,
print.
no. No,
Yeah,
and they didn't really change a whole lot of it. I mean, the surprise table in the Dungeon Master's Guide is correct, whereas the one in the Player's Handbook is not. But other than that, um, it, one's got to remember all this stuff that came out of the Dungeon Master's Guide wasn't player facing because it wasn't really for the players, it's for the Dungeon Master and how to deal with these things. He gave all this stuff in that Player's Handbook for the players, and then now he put all the information in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Okay, here's how you deal with that stuff. Yeah, it's excellent. It's a
yeah,
good
yeah,
question
and
right
really,
here.
you're right.
Yeah, the good question here. Do you think 1E is the pinnacle of character creation, gameplay aside, or did other additions improve it regardless of other pitfalls? Um, eh, I couldn't put the pinnacle of character. It's just different. You know, I like first edition Dungeons and Dragons. I like first edition Dungeons and Dragons characters. I wouldn't call it the pinnacle of character creation. Other character creation, other games, other editions streamlined the character creation process a little bit when they made changes to the abilities. I mean, one of the best parts of this is you might have an 18 charisma doesn't give you the same bonus as an 18 constitution. It's not a +4, depending on your class. There were differences between them and what the different numbers and stuff meant. Um, Putting all of that on everything on the same scale, yeah, it made it a lot easier. Made it a whole lot faster to generate characters and stuff. But it also took some of the uniqueness, some of the game value out of it too. This was an
Yeah,
excellent.
and I agree with that. And for that really is a good question, and that's a question I can certainly appreciate. I've played all of the editions. However, mostly AD&D is where I spent most of my time. AD&D and 2E a little bit later on. And AD&D is my favorite character generation and can expanded to become even a little more favorite once I got my hands on things like the Dungeoneer Survival Guide and the Wilderness Survival Guide, because I thought that that was a really nice use of dungeoneering, spelunking, wilderness type tools with the non-weapon proficiencies that were included in there. But I even enjoyed creating characters with Oriental adventures. I suspect everybody in the time period did, because that's when, everything was sort of an American ninja type of movie or whatever. Karate was baked into our DNA back then. I really did enjoy creating characters in 2E. The full non-weapon proficiency there, and the smoothness of the interaction. Even when you got into some of the splat books, the complete book of Rangers, Fighters,
Mm-hmm.
those types of things that included kits and whatnot. 2E was a much more, even with Psionicus, 2E was a much more streamlined experience, but there was a certain charm of digging through AD&D, especially when you became really good at it and making up those characters and filling them out on both the Goldenrod sheets and the ones they released along with the Orange Spines, whatever it was. Uh, Ref, I forget the product code, but everybody knows that sheet that was kind of zebra striped, yellow and white, and had the various information on it. I believe they dropped weapon versus armor type off of that sheet, as I recall. But back in those days, anybody worth their salt was making their own character sheets and
Yeah,
going to a place like
yeah.
the convenience store and running off 5-cent photocopies, or even a little later going to Kinko's and printing them on parchment paper and doing all this kind of stuff. And then, I mean, the pinnacle, if we're going to talk about it from a mechanical standpoint and going through the motions, would probably be 3.5 in terms of wrangling a great deal of complexity into an easy to follow flowchart. But this is where the character is in character generation for me. Would be
Sure,
first
sure.
edition AD&D.
Because all the extra little bits and pieces and stuff, where there are all the little differences and stuff remain. Yeah, I love 3.5 when they fixed 3 with 3.5. I've played 4. Nobody likes to admit that they've played fourth edition. I played it. I bought the books. In fact,
It
when I
could
was
be fun. Yeah, I
you
played
know,
it.
teach my
Yeah.
kids, yeah, and fifth edition has got they all have their merits and what they were trying to achieve with their design points and stuff. Um, but it all boils back, you know, to this. Why were all those house rules and stuff made? Why were things changed or dropped or stuff out of those other rules that were in this one? Those are some good questions to ask. Weapon versus armor type made weapon choice matter. You know, so those were some um, good pieces of this, right, that were lost.
Right. Right. And
So
it really just is unfortunate that the full breadth of options and scope and stuff like that haven't been included in more games. At least more games of AD&D. And I understand it's hard to find all of this information and whatnot, but even the document we put together for this presentation
Mhm.
took what it took longer to conceive of how to lay it out and what might work to go through on a stream than it did of copying and pasting it together.
Okay, I was going to
And
say,
there's
you
all kinds of
hopefully
things
you
you can
didn't
do to
spend 3
simplify.
hours on that document.
No,
Because
I spent like 8 hours thinking about it.
oh, okay.
Yeah, but no, the actual process of doing it was, that was quick and
Yeah,
easy. Um,
quick and easy.
yeah, yeah.
So let's talk about our next foray into this. We are not done with character generation. I think what we need to do is cover multi-classing, which we brushed over here a little bit, as well as the spell users. We can do that next time, and we'll go through an abbreviated roll up process with those. I'll come up with some already created, and we will talk about the aspects of spells, spell casting, um, bonus spells for clerics, um, the percent to know and all that kind of stuff for magic users and stuff. We can cover that in a stream. We've already talked enough about the basics of how to roll one up. We can talk about the differences for rolling up a spellcaster. Sounds like a good plan
Yeah,
for
yeah, and I
next
agree.
Thursday.
And
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, and psionics was really a perfect kind of lead into that
sure.
because it shows us what's in the player's handbook, and then that kind of leads us back into multi-classing and the concept of dual classing, and then getting into the DMG where the acquisition of initial spells is introduced. You know, um,
Hmm.
because there's a lot of questions around how magic users get spells. Many DMs just allow them to pick them. Many DMs say, okay, your first level, roll through the whole list. But the Dungeon Master's Guide has a specific uh, set of rules for acquisition of magic user spells in particular, because it's assumed that the magic user has learned from an apprentice. And those would be fun things to talk about. And a specific spell list, which makes it really interesting.
Hmm. Yep. Here's a quick question for you there. I'm assuming TOH
Uh,
must mean to
I
the
am
board.
not. Yeah, yeah, I am not. I don't know. I don't know that I'll make it to the convention. I've been working on other things and working on uh, trying to run some games, playing more games, get more published work out there, and sort of work on things like what we're doing now. Um, Meant to sort of preserve some of this stuff and to stop the stagnation in my publishing work, because I've been sitting on piles of stuff that I need to get out to people, and the best way for me to do that is to use those things on a regular basis and to talk about them. So I don't know.
Mhm.
I might drop in. I haven't set up to run anything, but I might drop in and play something. I might drop in and observe, um, or something along those lines. But yeah, I don't have any plans to do that.
Oh yeah, let's see. What did he say here? Not going to make it. Looked like you had two scheduled, but maybe they're left over, last year. Yeah, I don't think that events listing gets cleared out. So if you see something there, take a close look at what date it is that's posted for. Yeah.
Yeah, if it doesn't get cleared out, I don't know. I haven't unfortunately paid too much attention to it, but I'll take a look and see if there's events that I've left in there.
Let's see. Let me type this in here real quick. Plugging a Dungeon Delver a lot this night. Yeah, the great underground online gaming convention. See, the Dungeon Delver. He's the one that's actually putting out all together, running it. I'm sure he would be happy to help you guys get all that stuff set up and taken care of. We want to play these old school games, not just talk about them. All right, here's another comment. AAS
Right.
and SH has gold sheets as well. Interesting. I'm not sure if I know who AS and SH.
Uh, uh, um, Astonishing Swordsmen and Sorcerers of Hyperborea.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was asked about Hyperborea once. I've never played it, and I've actually give it a good look at it and review it. The other one was Hackmaster, which is a first edition AD&D
Yeah.
clone of sorts. Yeah. How are your projects other than this one?
Hackmaster was a lot
Go
of
ahead.
fun.
Plug your projects here real quick if you've got something you want to talk about real fast. Let them know what you're up to as well.
Yeah, I've actually been working on them they're pretty hard. You know, this is the thing about that. You can get caught up in the minutia of how you want to proceed with things, particularly when you're developing something that you really care about. You know, you've got a vision of it in your mind's eye, and then you also have a vision of what you think you should do to make sure that people are happy with it. Because for me, none of this stuff, hey, money's great, right? But none of this stuff is about money. It's about, I've said it a million times. It sounds like a broken record with this stuff, but it's about preservation of things that I find important. If I want to build publishable products on top of that that expand those rules for monetary purposes, that's one thing. So that's been one of the problems because I started out much like Gygax did with a monster manual. I created this monster manual, and then I realized that the work that I needed to do for that sort of depended on um, having a definition of what these things actually meant. So then I built a book and actually published that book related just to the definitions of what would show up in the monster manual. But then I realized that there was a lot of other stuff that I could be doing that would provide value to, and of course we've talked about the art struggle and stuff in various places such as on X. um so I think I have a little bit of clarity of vision right now to where what I've been working on is I've got a basic spells SRD, a character player's handbook sort
Mm-hmm.
of type of clone that aims to preserve as many of the original rules as possible in a Creative Commons type of format. That's almost done. The spells I was working on for most of the day today and a couple of days ago. So the basic intent is to have a player's SRD that can be applied to anything. Some of the game systems like OSE, which I feel uh, strip out a lot of the original character. You know, like we were talking about a few minutes ago. Only fighters get these particular bonuses. Weapon versus armor type, all the things that make AD&D special, which have been kind of steamrolled and smoothed out over time. I aim to bring those back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my best to get these out on itch as quickly as possible. I'll probably still do sort of a pay what you want type of model for that,
Mm-hmm.
but rather than publishing those as completely formatted, ready to go, relatively beautiful books, I'm going to do them as works of progress, works in progress, and have them in source control. So if people want to see what actually goes in to the code and even contribute to them or whatever, basically, I'm trying to bring all of this stuff in as an open source foundation for the publishing products that or projects that I think people would like to actually read as some sort of book. It's
Sure.
just it's a hard thing to do on your own and to try to determine how you want to approach it. And that's where you end up with just pages and hundreds of pages of stuff that's written, and then shifting focus and changing scope. Um, but fortunately, I've got people who are enjoyable to talk to and people who like talking about this stuff to
Yeah.
discuss it with, and that helps me with clarity. And I really appreciate you asking. Thank you.
Yeah.
You should see something really soon. You should see something soon because it's gonna. I could die before the stuff's done, and I refuse to allow that.
Um, and I will say, as a user of your Fantasy Grounds first edition AD&D options and house rules product, you do put some effort into your work. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And
Hmm.
that right there, that has ended up being my cross to bear. And sometimes that thing takes 2 or 3 weeks, particularly when rules. And we've got a big rule set update coming in April. Not a rule set, but a fantasy grounds update coming in April. They're
Okay.
taking a bunch of the effects extensions and they're bringing it into fantasy grounds native.
Similar
So
to what
the
Foundry
however
did with
much,
all that stuff. Yeah.
yeah, depending on whether or not that stuff affects the rule set that we use for AD&D, we don't know yet. That hasn't been announced, but it's supposed to be announced within a couple of days. And if it does, then it'll be time to make a week a week's
Never
worth
back
of
into that mess
hopefully.
again. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Well,
yeah. But that's a time sink, but I enjoy doing it for people, you know.
and I think it's a highly useful if you really want to get back into real first edition games and you like Fantasy Grounds. First of all, if you want to buy Fantasy Grounds to home host a game, please see my link. It's in the show notes. Help me support me a little bit with uh, generating some funds because this does take some time and effort and you know as much as we like doing this kind of stuff for free, we still got to um, pay the light bill, right? Um,
I got
but
5 kids to feed.
yeah, well, my kids are grown up and they're feeding themselves right now, but that's a big plus. But I still corrupted them, and they love playing Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah. Oh, here's a good question
Hey,
here. We're
there's
we're
worse
running
things than
along and
that.
now you're answering questions here. Are you two playing anything right now, i.e., any house games, upcoming cons, etc.? Yes. Um, I do run paid games online through Start Playing. I have a one shot, we call it, at Old School Essentials, which is turning into more of a West Marches style. I've got players that keep coming back and they want to play their own characters in it as opposed to the pre generated characters. So that's kind of taken off on its own as well. I have a Friday night group in there that just is wrapping up, finished off the Lost Caverns of Sojkanth. They've been running, it's a paid game that's been running for well almost 2 years now. They started in
That's
B2 and we
excellent.
went to B1, X1, and plugging right along. Now they were in Lost Caverns. They want to build up enough levels to get to Giants, and I'll probably run them through Giants. It's a bunch of old guys that wanted to run back through the modules that they went through as kids. I have a Monday night game that I run for some really close friends. On Tuesday night, I participated in the Dungeon Delvers live stream for AD&D. And on Wednesday, every other Wednesday, I play with my brother. He uses Foundry to run the game in his Savage Worlds campaign. And then on the odd Wednesdays, my brother and my daughter and my son and I get together and play Baldur's Gate 3. So other than this live stream, I pretty much play or run games all the time because I
Yeah,
enjoy.
and for
Great.
me, I've got a. Oh, sorry.
No, go for it.
Yeah, yeah. For my part, I've got a couple of games I'm trying to get off
Oh,
the
I forgot
ground.
about the Saturday game
Um,
that we play.
oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
every other
There's the
Saturday
Saturday
we
game.
play with what's that? Shibboleth is where we're at the moment. Yeah, I forgot about that one.
Yeah,
How could I
yeah.
forget that one?
Yeah. Well, that one's long. We
That
both play in that
that's
one, and
Pathfinder one, first edition
it's
Pathfinder. I do like my first edition versions of games. Yes.
yeah. Me too. And that's run by somebody I've known since I was 12. Yes. So we
Yeah.
have fun with that. I've got a Monday night game that I play in, run by an excellent DM, and I've got a couple of games that I'm trying to get off the ground. But I'm also trying to not launch those without getting some of these because it's been a little over a year now that well, really, it's been over a year and a half that I've been working on my rules and my things that I hope to publish, and I really need to get that stuff out there. So running the games, which is one of the reasons I've pulled back from the amount of games I've played in, running the games has to take a back seat to that. However, I like the idea of always being available to run a one shot or something like that with anyone who's interested in playing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, John Collins. Yeah, we do miss you on Tuesday nights, even though I only got to play with you a little bit there. I understand that your commercial endeavor there is occupied a whole lot of time and cut down on what you could do, but yeah, we do miss you on Tuesdays.
Yeah, well, and I appreciate that. I just can't do Monday, Tuesday, Friday, Saturday. you know, there's, and then there is a little bit of work that I have to do for customers to pay the bills, boring programming work.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah, I perfectly understand. And I don't have any of that kind of stuff hanging over me, so I have more time to play games. Um, for right now. And
yeah,
eventually, when I
yeah,
become retirement age, I'll have a lot more time to play
right, right. Um,
It's one thing to look forward to.
assuming
What are
you
you looking forward to retirement
do,
for?
God
So I can
willing,
play
yes,
more
sir.
games. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah, absolutely. That's what it's all about.
Well, here we are running in an hour and a half. You got some editing to do for your. Are we going to do this? Do a replay on Saturday?
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that's a good idea. What I can do is bring these down, chop out the stuff like when I became totally confused at the end of the last session. I think it befell a little bit of both of us with filling out the attack matrices and stuff, uh,
Right.
and sort of put something together with some little cuts in between, uh, run it as a premiere, and then maybe we'll have between these two videos sort of a consolidated cut of
Yep.
what's required, a
Sure.
step by step that we can then upload. And if anybody follows anybody else's channel, it's just out there for posterity, right?
Yeah. And we can go back over and answer questions and stuff maybe that we didn't get to or that they didn't get to asking. Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah. And that's one of the nice things about the premieres. When those run, we don't have to we don't have to worry about trying to face a camera, read documents, or anything. We can just listen and interact with chat, and I really enjoy that.
Yeah,
That's
you've
sort of a
noticed my
highlight
mind
of
this
my week
evening
a
when
lot
I
of times.
stopped to type. My vision went away from the
Right,
camera
right.
back onto my keyboard because these things don't work as well as I used to typing. Yeah, my fat finger
Same
everything.
here.
Yeah. Where's that text?
Right.
I can't do text to speech while I'm doing this either because Michael picked it up. Right? Yeah.
Right.
Hmm. All right. Well, I want to go ahead and cut this short since we're running an hour and a half. You got a whole lot to cut out of this because we've been talking nonsense. This is our equivalent of the Seinfeld show. Yeah, a show about nothing.
Yeah. That's it.
All right, awesome.
Well, thanks for having me again, as
Yeah,
always.
this has been great. I'll go ahead and send you back to the green room so you can clean up that mess you made, and then we'll get
You don't want to know
back
about
to you.
that mess.
Hey, have a good night. We'll talk to you a little later. All right. Well, thanks again, folks, for joining us here on this nice little dive back down into first edition Dungeons and Dragons character creation, where we finished up where we had left off from the last time. Again, I think our plan going forward will be the next one. We'll talk about multi-classing and spell acquisition and stuff that we didn't cover with this ranger, the fighter character. We'll jump back into that again for the next time, because that's an important aspect of character generation that we definitely need to cover. And then after that, please, like and subscribe on the channel. Go visit Doomsource channel, like and subscribe to his as well. Leave some comments on this video and stuff if you didn't get to answer questions or whatever. We'll look back at them and we'll answer questions. Give us some ideas for other things that you want us to cover as far as first edition Dungeons and Dragons goes, and then we will dive back into that and talk to you guys with those too. Yeah, well, go ahead and let this go. Please, if you like this content, please like and subscribe. Hit that bell icon if you want to hear notifications about us doing stuff. I've got other things running. First edition Rollmaster every now and then. I'll just live stream my game prep and stuff. I try to be as entertaining as I possibly can. Thanks again for watching, and we will catch you on the next one.